So Kelsey's been with us before, and she's got some great insights on workplace bias, and we'll have a conversation after her presentation. So Kelsey, it's all yours.
All right, I'm gonna share my screen. All right, well, thanks so much for having me today. I always love coming on this show, as we call it, and providing some, information, relevant information. That's always what I try to do, provide relevant, hot topics that we can all relate to. So first, I'm going to start with this Procter & Gamble advertisement that I thought was very, very interesting. Let me find it first. Sorry, I don't know why it's not coming up on my.
Bless you.
It's the pollens. Thank you. Excuse me.
Here we go. All right, can you all see my screen?
Yep.
So Procter & Gamble came out with a number of very, very good commercials like that, advertisements. So I'd recommend you go and check them out. They're, I think that it says a lot, if you have never been the only one in the room that looks like you, then, you may not understand what people are going through, right? So I think it's important to let go of those biases, so that we can all benefit. I need to exit out because this YouTube is still trying to go. All right, so now back to the presentation. So what is implicit bias? It's also called hidden bias. We all have implicit bias. We all make judgments about people based on various characteristics. It's something that's automatic, it's ingrained. It often comes about when we have to make quick decisions in our everyday lives, as well as in the workplace. And so it can show up in small ways, but it can make a big impact. So here are some examples. 48% of African-American women and 47% of Latina women report being mistaken for administrative or custodial staff. Less than 15% of US men are over 6 feet tall, yet 60% of corporate CEOs are at least this height. The taller a man is, the more likely he will earn more than a shorter man. Resumes with African-American, Asian, and Hispanic names are less likely to get callbacks for interviews. So I can name many different areas where we have bias, right? Weight, extroversion versus introversion, marital and parental status, disability status, foreign accents. Why are some accents viewed as sophisticated and beautiful, while other accents are viewed as inferior? College attendance, where we went to college, we make judgments on people about where they attended college. Hobbies, tattoos and piercings. So these are all areas where we make judgments, and we may do so unintentionally, or sometimes intentionally. So we have to be aware of those. This can impact your business. You can feel isolated. Your employees will feel isolated, low or no emotional engagement. So, they may be performing, but what they have done is they have cut off relationships in the workplace. They're getting the job done, but they are not emotionally engaged. This makes them feel unvalued, not respected, that managers are not taking an interest in them as a person. And, they don't have a feeling of purpose, of connection, relationship building, or loyalty to your business. And so you may lose good people because of this implicit bias. So what can you do? First, you need to acknowledge it, okay? So if you can't acknowledge the biases, or if we don't try to, then we're inviting them to divide us. So they may be unintentional, but the impact is real. So how do we work to see what they see, know what they know, feel what they feel? Well, we all have been victims of implicit bias, and we have also been the perpetrator. And so it starts with awareness. Each of us individually needs to be aware of our biases, and when we recognize them, we need to address them, right? So we need to do things like, if you're a business owner, diversity and inclusion training. You need to identify groups that feel excluded, and you need to take action. So how do you identify those groups? You can do surveys, right? Do studies of your employees, and from that, you're able to get some data on how your people are feeling in the workplace, right? You need to maybe strip identifying information from resumes in your recruiting process. So take away the name, take away the college that they attended, take away any identifying features of the resume that may create some sort of bias. You want to look at just the education, the duties and experience. Provide opportunities for people that typically you may not have previously provided opportunities for. Give people a chance to show you what they can do. Mentor and coach people that don't look like you or aren't like you, are different. So there's many ways that we can try and combat this, but it takes talking about it. It takes addressing it. It takes calling it out and knowing that you will have uncomfortable conversations, and that's okay. Going into it knowing that you may have uncomfortable conversations, and that is how we're going to combat this type of issue. So some examples, that I've had are, a manager questioning hiring a female candidate because they just got married and they're of childbearing age, and not wanting them to go on maternity leave, even though they're not pregnant, but they could have a child someday, So let's maybe not hire them. And then the opposite, a single parent with 5 children, a single mother with 5 children, not considering not hiring them because how are they going to get to work? They're going to have a lot of parent duties and their mind's not going to be on the work duties. That's another issue that I've seen. So, I mean, I have a couple more, but I'd like to open it up. You know, what implicit biases can you identify that exist within your organization, in your hiring practices, in your policies? What do you think the sources of implicit bias are for you? And I know that this can be personal because it is going into maybe your upbringing. And so if you don't want to answer those, that's perfectly fine. But these are things that you can think about on your own. When an implicit bias is identified, what steps can you take individually or institutionally to stop that from continuing? There is an implicit bias test. There's a bunch of different types of tests that you can take. It's through Harvard. And so that link is there. I recommend that you do that. It's very interesting. It tells you like where you fall on the bias scale with many different, it has it based on gender, based on age. So you can choose and take the test for each of those different sections. So
Kelsey,
let's talk about it. Yeah.
what if you're actually looking for diversity in your workforce, and so you're actually seeking diversity? If you're working with a recruiter that's going to strip resumes from any type of race, gender, sex identifying criteria, then how can you achieve actually what you're trying to do, which is to have a more diverse?
I think that some of the recruiting can be targeted. So you can target it towards those groups. You go through associations that may target certain groups that you're interested in with diversifying your team. Or I think maybe you'd be surprised to see how diverse you'd actually get by removing those characteristics, and that potentially it wouldn't be a problem if you're not looking at those identifying factors.
Questions from others on the call? Other questions?
Well, no, I was
Go
going
ahead,
to make a comment. So we've had a problem with our hiring with regard to sex. So we Land Systems, before our acquisition, we're about 15 people. We're a woman-owned business. Mary's daughter Terry, both of whom are engineers. When we try to hire engineers to perform IT services, we don't get any female applicants. And we're actually experiencing the effects of a problem that happened probably decades ago. And that if we couldn't hire a female engineer if we wanted to sometimes, like they're just, they don't apply to the job, probably because they're not there. So I don't know what the proportion of male to female engineer graduates are from anywhere in the US, but I'd like to hope that our 2 out of 15 females in our company being engineers is a good percentage. But you know, when we think about things like that, when we're hiring, we tend to see a very homogeneous pool of applicants. But I don't think that's because we're asking the wrong questions or we're posting the wrong information, although we do think about that. I think it's a bias someone else had in the education process that is producing far fewer diversified engineer graduates.
If I can make a comment following what John is saying, especially as it relates to hiring, there's a video I think you'll all find insightful if you haven't already seen it. It's on Netflix. It's called Coded Bias. And in the documentary, you can see how there are algorithms and software that are used. And unfortunately, there's a lot of bias that's happening to people. So it could be that this is impacting people, not just in hiring, but in so many different areas. It's very well done. It's well researched. And fortunately, it looks like this is gaining some awareness because it's going to impact people's ability to get a mortgage and insurance and a number of other things.
What was it called again?
Coded bias. I'll write it in the chat.
Got it.
So I think to add, John, yes, you're absolutely right. There are some industries where it's higher either male or female, right? And so if you're trying to diversify your team, you really have to work hard to go through some different channels. And the best you can do is have these goals in place, and you try to reach out to these very specific groups. So for example, while you were saying that, I just Googled how to find women engineers in Atlanta. And I found the Atlanta section, Society of Women Engineers. So you could reach out to them and say, hey, we're looking for female engineers to join our team. How can we find them? What resources do you have? Do you have a job board that we can post to? So there's just, and maybe they won't, right? Maybe they won't, but those are the types of things that you can do if there's a specific group that you're trying to target.
Right. Yeah. I mean, our team is very diverse by all other slices, and, by culture, by race, by lots of things. But yeah, just that one. And I've always felt like it was the pool must be smaller. But I've never really seen statistics based on why that might be. I've been to Georgia Tech's campus. There are many, many women there. But we haven't seen them apply for our jobs.
Reaching out to Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
You can reach out to Georgia Tech and see if there's an option there. They've got to have some sort of, women's groups, I imagine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you, Kelsey.
I think it's so interesting that, of course, we all have these implicit biases, and then, you recognize it. And then what Sabine said, you need to confront it. You need to talk about it. And I wonder, where are the tools for a society as a whole? I'm not just talking about a few individuals, but for society as a whole, how can we just get educated and become better communicators so we can talk about it?
I do think that partly, a big part of it starts with our children. So, I think that as parents, you have to really from an early age just ingrain in them the value of diversity and not having the I don't see color, I don't see whatever, I don't see this blinders on, because that can actually do more harm. Because absolutely I see that people are different than me, and that is what is beautiful about our country, right? Is that we have such diversity, and so I think it's important that it starts with our children, and then of course as we develop into working adults, we also need to, like you said, we have to address it, and it's uncomfortable, and it's probably not always fun, but we have to address it. We have to train, we have to talk about it. And I think we're seeing that happen more. This morning I got coffee with someone, and I was telling her that I was coming on to do this, and she said, oh, I had this happen the other day. I was playing a tennis match, and the team we were playing against, both of them had very like ethnic names, like traditional names. I don't know where they were from or anything, but their names were very traditional names from their culture. And she said that her tennis partner said, oh, you gotta be kidding me, like that. And she said, she called her out and she said, you didn't mean to say that out loud, did you? And so, it's things like that we have to say something, right? If we see something, say something.
It's interesting. I mean, I'm in the language industry, right? We see all kinds of cultural differences, and oftentimes, we say, oh, the French, they're so picky, and oh my goodness, the Canadian, right? So we say that all the time, and anyway, and then you go, oh well, now we have a bias. Yeah.
I was going to add in
Right.
too. So coming from a multiracial family, with my dad being Caucasian and my mother had being, from China, was able to see up close growing up the bias, from what my dad experienced and what my mom experienced. But I think for me and my sister, that allowed us to be a little more well-rounded and understand that there is bias, and for us to to recognize that, and also to hopefully be less biased because of that.
So we're sadly going to run out of time, and I think, Kelsey, we could go on for, and maybe we should do this again in a few more. I think Sabine set us up at the beginning by saying, just smile and move on, but, and I think that's so true, and maybe we don't know how to do it. Kurt put something in the chat that said, in response to, so making it a safe environment to be different is okay. And he wrote back saying, acceptance and value, showing the staff that what value they bring to the team. It's just part of opening the can here and saying, let's talk about it. So I think that while on that first level, we're just going, okay, Jonathan had his story about his dad, you just kind of move on. But at some point, we're all coming to grips with the fact that if we don't move on and if we can address it, it seems like it's going to be a far better workplace and a far better community and such. So I think at this point, want to thank, let's see, I get to go, sorry if I take this over here. Want to thank Kelsey for bringing up this conversation. It's clearly on a lot of our minds and something we need to figure out. Oops. Get that out of here. Sorry about that. So in wrapping up, we got a couple of events coming up that we want you to be able to join us for, and you'll see them in the screen. Which are, we're talking about creating content that converts after Memorial Day holiday. Laurie's going to speak about another use of video. Lead generation roundtable. Should be a good one at the end of June. And then our friends from the Small Business Development Center are coming back to talk about how far to unpivot some of the trends they're already seeing. So, and in closing moments, the last little bit of humor, a lot of our conversation was about recruiting, yet I think Sabine brought it clear to us that there's a lot more than just recruiting that this involves. So with that, thank you all. It was a great time, great conversation. That's what it's about.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Everybody.
Have a good day.
Good rest of your week, everybody.
Take care.